Hi, boys and girls. This is Ruby Holler, Chapter 22, called A Trip to Boxton. Dallas and Florida had returned to Boxton several times with Tiller and Sari, and each time the twins had made it clear that they did not want to go near that faded yellow Boxton Creek home leaning toward the railroad tracks. "Don't you want to visit your friends there?" Sari asked. "The ones we know? They're probably gone already," Florida said. "Kids go in and out of there that fast?" Tiller asked. "Like a revolving door," Dallas said. "And how long have the two of you been there?" Sari asked. "Do you mind if I ask you that?" "What's to mind?" Florida said. "We've been there longer than anybody. We've been there a zillion years." "Our revolving door sweeps us right back in there," Dallas said. "Oh," Sari said. "We're trouble," said Florida. "Double trouble." "You know what our son Buddy used to call himself?" Sari said. "Mr. Trouble. He wasn't any more trouble than any of the other kids, but one summer he got in his head that he couldn't do anything right." As they drove out of the Holler, Sari told them the story of how Buddy had decided that he was an orphan and had lived in the barn one summer until Tiller and Sari made the getting over being an orphan triple chocolate cookies. "Why'd you tell us that story?" Florida asked. "I don't know," Sari said. "It just popped into my head. You know what? I just realized something. Me and Tiller are orphans too." "You're not," Dallas said. "Technically, yes we are," Sari replied. "Our parents are no longer living." "It's not the same thing," Florida said. Sari patted Florida's hand. "You're right, Florida. That was a stupid thing for me to say, and I'm sorry my brain popped it out of my mouth." "Hey," Florida said, "you know those triple chocolate cookies you made yesterday? Were those by any chance getting over being an orphan cookies?" Sari nudged Tiller. "Tiller, is that the recipe you used?" "Can't rightly say for sure," Tiller said. "Enough of this chatter. Here's Boxton. Let's get our plans straight." Sari said, "I know you don't want to hear this, but we really should make a stop to see Mr. and Mrs. Trepp." "Don't say it," Florida said. "Don't you say their names. We're not going. Don't you go neither." "That's right," Dallas said. "If we set foot in there, they'll throw us in those cobwebby rooms and lock the doors." "Oh, now," Sari said, "I do think you might be exaggerating a mite." "No way," Florida said. "I'll jump out of this truck right now if you say we have to go in there." Okay, Sari said. "You don't have to go. Don't worry. We'll all meet up at Grace's diner. How's that?" While the others did their errands, Sari slipped around the back of the courthouse and down the alley, which was bordered on one side by railroad tracks and on the other side by a sprawling field dotted with junk cars and shacks. She could see the tilting Boxton Creek home ahead. The alley was littered with crumpled papers and dented hubcaps with old rubber tires and empty pop cans, and Sari quickened her pace, feeling uneasy in this unfamiliar place. Dallas and Florida were standing on the sidewalk outside Grace's diner when the door opened and out shuffled Mr. Trepp. Well, he said. "Trouble twins." Dallas and Florida backed away. Donut crumbs clung to the front of Mr. Trepp's shimmery blue shirt. "Where are those people? That old couple? They're not bringing you back, are they?" Florida took another 2 steps backward. "No, they're not bringing us back. They're getting stuff for our trips." "Oh?" Mr. Trepp glanced across the street at the red brick bank standing on the corner. "They in there, getting piles of money?" "At that stupid bank?" Florida said. "No way. They don't need banks." "They don't?" Mr. Trepp picked a crumb off his shirt and popped it in his mouth. "It was my distinct understanding that those two had piles of money. Piles of it. Collectors pay a lot of money for those little carvings they make." "Well, they don't need to keep their money in any stupid bank," Florida said. "They've got understone funds." "Yeah," Dallas said. "They've got their own private banks out in the Holler, buried under stones." "Is that right?" Mr. Trepp said. "How clever." "And me and Dallas have our own understone funds," Florida said. "How charming," Mr. Trepid replied, glancing at his watch. "And when is it you're all heading out on your trips?" "Right soon," Florida said. Mr. Trepid looked up at the sky. "Very good indeed. I wish you all well." Then, flicking at the rest of the crumbs on his shirt, he said, "Must be off," and on down the sidewalk he scurried. "What's he so happy about?" Dallas asked. "He got rid of us, that's what," Florida said. Sari made her way through the littered alley and approached the Boxton Creek home from the back. As she was rounding the side, she heard Mrs. Trepid's voice. "Stop that this instant," Mrs. Trepid commanded. "Hush!" Sari heard a baby cry and saw Mrs. Trepid leaning over a baby carriage. Her face bent down close to the crying occupant. "Stop that," Mrs. Trepid repeated. "Is that a baby you're scolding?" Sari asked. Mrs. Trepid straightened quickly and turned to Sari. "This baby is so fussy," she said, "just like those twins were." Sari nodded. "Babies can be that way." Mrs. Trepid looked annoyed. "You make it sound normal. Doesn't feel normal to me. Drives me crazy." Mrs. Trepid glanced around the side of the house. "Are you bringing the twins back?" "No," Sari said, "not yet. Your husband asked me to pick up Dallas's passport here." "Oh," Mrs. Trepid said. "Well then, go inside. Morgan will find it for you. Mr. T isn't here." She jiggled the buggy. "Aren't you supposed to leave some money?" "Am I?" Sari asked. "Yes, for the passport and all the trouble he went to." "Was it so very much trouble?" "Yes," Mrs. Trepid said. "I believe you owe him $300. $300? Really? My passport was much, much, much less than that." "The rest is for all the trouble," Mrs. Trepid said, "and for transportation and documents and such." As Sari turned to go inside, Mrs. Trepid asked, "The twins? How are they?" "They're fine," Sari said. "No trouble at all." That's the end of that chapter. Bye.